Hey everybody! This week we've been taking a look at some of the music for Drift, a game that I'm scoring right now that's in the Steam Next Fest, hence why this week there's so many videos about it. But been just doing some walkthroughs of a few of the tracks that I've written for it. Today we're going to take a look at something that's pretty ambient, so this is probably one of the tracks that I think has the most sort of laid-back feel. Right now we're just calling this one Ethereal Pulse. Obviously we'll be hopefully coming up with a better name for it by the time the soundtrack releases. But right now we're just working on getting different levels of intensity into the game. So I'll go ahead and play through this and then do a little walkthrough on what's happening in the track. All right. One of the things that is really great about composing right now at this time in 2023 is how rich and textured so many synths can be. I feel like when I first started sort of trying out um, adding electronics into my scores, I very much come from a more orchestral background where I'm used to writing for strings and winds and brass and all that stuff. And synths were a little scary because I don't know a lot about them. I'm not a person who spent a lot of time growing up like playing synths or like collecting them. You know, you see these videos of composers that have these massive racks of synths in their studios. That's definitely not me. I am much more comfortable with a pencil and a sheet of manuscript paper rather than electronics. But these days, there's such a wide variety of synths that really give you a lot of organic feeling. So the one in here that I think really makes it sound so interesting is this Omnisphere patch that's from yeah, it's another unfinished. If you are not buying patch libraries from the unfinished, I would recommend that you take a look at it because it's a pretty he's got just an astounding array of ideas. We've got this synth pad here that sort of starts off at the beginning giving us this really almost stringy metallic sense. I believe this is actually in the bowed metals part of Colossus here. Colossus 2 is this one. It just has it tells such a story in its texture over time. The place where I think that it really sticks out is here at the end, as we're sort of winding everything down. You know, when you're doing something a little more ambient, it can be hard to kind of wind down because there's not a lot of places to go. But when you have something like this, you just have so many interesting things happening in all the different ranges of this patch that it really works out in terms of giving things, you know, a continued interest as you're listening to them. So that's definitely something that I would recommend. If you're like me and you haven't done a lot of work with synth, go grab you know, a couple of preset libraries from somebody like The Unfinished, or I know there's some other ones out there, and see what you can do by starting with one of their patches and modifying it. I think I've taken this one and I've played a little bit with the envelope on it, I think. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll go in here and actually switch out the Omnisphere sample to try out some different textures within the same sort of design that the patch maker has given me. So sorry, I'm a little under the weather this morning, a little nasally. Apologize. So this one's definitely more sparse, I would say, a little more bare than some of the other ones we've looked at. Basically built around this little melody here. It's just a little C sharp minor melody. One of the things here that I think is maybe worth talking a little bit about is, you know, back in the drift track, we talked about how sometimes I like to write a little bit, I guess, asymmetrical melodies that maybe are kind of an odd number of measures. In this case, that's not what I'm doing here. Just straight up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? It's just a regular old 8-bar phrase. You know, it hangs a little bit here at the end. But overall, it's just a regular melody. And I think that in terms of your construction and the structure of your music, that's a place where you can have variation, right? That's a place where you can add something that contrasts with something else. So in this case, it's just a bog standard 8 measure structure here. Nothing out of the ordinary, which I think sits well against that other stuff that maybe had a structure that was a little bit more varied, a little bit more unusual, I guess. So the other thing I think to note in this one that's really interesting are these choral parts. So that's very spacey. So obviously a lot of reverb. We're putting some black hole stuff on there. Usually with black hole, what I do is I'll, like everything else, start with a preset and then kind of modify it to my needs. Another thing that I find is really interesting with choral stuff is you can make it sound, give it that really thin, reedy kind of texture by doing just a little bit of EQ, pulling out some of these mids, really boosting these highs so that you get all of that crunchy upper partial information that kind of pops out, which gives it a really sort of thin, reedy, ethereal feeling. And it, as a consequence, also really emphasizes that reverb for you because reverb typically can be accentuated in the highs. So that's something that I'm sure a lot of you already know, but it's I think a really interesting and fun technique that I find myself relying on quite a bit. The samples here are Albion Solstice and Strezov Rhodope. That's a Bulgarian choir sample library. Really nice library. We used it a lot when we were doing all of that sort of endless music that Gareth came up with on Infinite. When we were demoing it, we were using a lot of this library here. Obviously, in Infinite, we actually got a real Bulgarian choir for the actual soundtrack. But it's pretty authentic. I think the sound between the sample and the actual recording was pretty close. So I think this is a really wonderful library. It's very playable. It's very easy to take that really nasally folk sound and find yourself with something that's not as pretty, I guess. So I really recommend drenching it in a lot of reverb, being really careful about how you process it to make sure that you're getting something that really sounds a little bit more, I guess, tribal and ethereal most of the time, rather than getting that really close, harsh sound that you can sometimes get out of those, out of that style of singing. But it's a really wonderful style of singing that is just so upfront and in the mask. It's just all in the nose. It's a really beautiful and different style of singing. So aside from that, I think on this one, the only notable stuff is maybe that it's got no loops are being used for the drums in this one. I occasionally use a drum loop here and there because typically a drum loop is better than anything I could program. Really wanted to sort of scale it back here, so a lot of sparse drums. This is just the Logic Ultra Beat built-in electronic drum set. This little synth thing in the middle I think is interesting. What's happening there is pretty standard chord progression. We got a 4, or actually is it 4? It's really, if we're in C sharp minor, it's like 6. It's A major, so it's like a 6, 7, and then we're going back to 1. But when we go back to 1 here at 60, instead of moving to what we expect, which would be a C sharp minor chord, we've got this note right here, which is F or C. It's really E sharp, right? Because the third of a C sharp minor chord is E. We're just bringing it up to make that chord major, so it's an E sharp. So we're bringing the tonic in here in a major flavor, I guess, which is a little surprising, right? It's almost like a little mini Picardy third sort of in the middle there. And then we immediately bring it back down to C sharp minor here at 62, which then gives us our answer. We've got, these 3 chords that sort of answer it. So that's kind of a place that I really found fun to listen to. It was kind of unexpected, so I was a little wary to actually put this in here, but the developer ended up liking it. I had some volume issues getting that to sit nicely with the rest of the track, but it's really easy to allow stuff that's that high and silvery to kind of like pierce through. So I really had to be careful about audio levels there. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting little phrase that really sort of serves to break up the track and give it again, looking for places where we can have contrast, looking for places where we can do something that's not the same, is always helpful. So yeah, that's one of our more ethereal tracks. You're seeing a lot of commonality, I think, between a lot of these tracks that I'm putting up, wherein it's really bare and simple and sparse, but we're trying to do interesting things within that, which I think is really inspiring. It goes back to that Stravinskyan idea of like, the prison of infinite choice, right? When you just have a billion options, it can be really hard to pick one out of that, endless sea. But when you sort of constrain yourself, when you try to keep things as sparse as possible, it's amazing how it sort of can inspire you to try different things and different ideas within those constraints, how those constraints can actually be freeing, right? Rather than constraining. So anyway, yeah, we got a few more tracks I think we're gonna put up, or a couple more at least. And on the channel this week to promote the game, just want to remind everybody to give that Steam store page a look, try out that demo. It really helps out the developer to get some visibility. The more people who try out the game, watch their stream, see if you like it. If you like, sort of a survival rafty style with some hopefully enjoyable electronic music. All right, well, until next time, here's one more playthrough, and I'll see you for the next one.